Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Jajanaranjana. Yashodanandana Jajanaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Does anyone know for absolute certain where we are? Tapas, you there?
Yes, Prabhu. 4.24.
24? Okay. Text number 24 in the 4th chapter. All right, that's good. Looks like I have it. Now I'm on page 213, but you have a different page number. This is verse number 24 in the 4th chapter. What's your page number? 210. Okay, I have the one book that has a different pagination. On this 27th day of June, 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are studying chapter 4 called Transcendental Knowledge. Text number 24, which is on page? 210. Okay. On page 210. Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavir, Brahmagnao, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaiva, Tena Gantavyam, Brahmakarma, Samadhina, Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavir, Brahmagnao, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaivatena Gantavyam, Brahmakarma Samadhina, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir, Brahmagnao Brahmanahutam, Brahmaivatena Gantavyam, Brahmakarma Samadhina, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir, Brahmagnao Brahmanahutam, Brahmaivatena Gantavyam, Brahmakarma Samadhina. Go ahead.
Brahmapanam Brahmahavir,
Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir,
Brahmagnao Brahmanahutam,
Brahmanahutam,
Brahmaivatena Gantavyam,
Brahmaivatena Gantavyam,
Brahmakarma Samadhinaha,
Brahmakarma Samadhina,
Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir,
Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir,
Brahmagano Brahmanahutam,
Brahmanagno Brahmanahutam,
Brahmaivatena Gantavyam,
Brahmaivatena Gantavyam,
Brahmakarma Samadhina,
Brahmakarma Samadhina. No? Yes?
Brahmapanam Brahmahavir,
Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir,
Brahmaganau Brahmanahutam,
Brahmagnao Brahmanahutam,
Brahmameva tena gantavyam,
Brahmaivatena Gantavyam,
Brahma karma smadhinam,
Brahmakarma Samadhina. Word by words. Brahma, spiritual in nature. Arpanam, contribution. Brahma, the supreme. Havihi, butter. Brahma, spiritual. Agnau, in the fire of consummation. Brahmana, by the spirit soul. Hutam, offered. Brahma, spiritual kingdom. Eva, certainly. Tena, by him. Gantavyam, to be reached. Brahma, spiritual. Karma, in activities. Samadhina, by complete absorption. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. Purport. How activities in Krishna consciousness can lead one ultimately to the spiritual goal is described here. There are various activities in Krishna consciousness, and all of them will be described in the following verses. But for the present, just the principle of Krishna consciousness is described. A conditioned soul entangled in material contamination is sure to act in the material atmosphere. And yet he has to get out of such an environment. The process by which the conditioned soul can get out of the material atmosphere is Krishna consciousness. For example, a patient who is suffering from a disorder of the bowels due to overindulgence in milk products is cured by another milk product, namely curds, that means yogurt. The materially absorbed conditioned soul can be cured by Krishna consciousness, as set forth here in the Gita. This process is generally known as yajna, or activities, sacrifices, simply meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu or Krishna. The more the activities of the material world are performed in Krishna consciousness, or for Vishnu only, the more the atmosphere becomes spiritualized by complete absorption. The word Brahma, or Brahman, means spiritual. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called Brahma Jyoti, his spiritual effulgence. Everything that exists is situated in that Brahma Jyoti. But when the Jyoti is covered by illusion, Maya, or sense gratification, it is called material. This material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus, the offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent of such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor, and the result are, all combined together, Brahman, or the Absolute Truth. The Absolute Truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter, dovetailed for the cause of the Absolute Truth, regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman, or the Supreme. When the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it is said to be in samadhi, or trance. Anything done in such a transcendental consciousness is called yajna, or sacrifice for the Absolute. In that condition of spiritual consciousness, the contributor, the contribution, the consumption, the performer or leader of the performance, and the result or ultimate gain, everything becomes one in the Absolute, the Supreme Brahman. That is the method of Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Salakya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, as we go on in this chapter, we'll see that Krishna is speaking of different kinds of sacrifices, the principle of yajna. Now, yajna is a kind of activity. Previously, Krishna has talked about these three kinds of activity: a karma, and vikarma. A karma being here, activity that doesn't produce a result. In other words, it's non-fruitive activity. Activity for the sake of God. There's no karmic reaction there. And rather, you're burning previous karmic reactions. Karma, in this context, is simply a fruit of activity. And when, in the context of karma, akarma, and vikarma, it's fruit of activity that is according to the tenets of the Vedas, because there's a whole section there called karma kanda, which are elaborate descriptions of different sacrifices with the aim of getting better birth in this planet or even going to the heavenly planets. So it's not grossly sinful activity. A vikarma is fruit of activity that has no reference to the Vedas and therefore is sinful, vicious, and produces very painful sinful reactions, and often, in this age especially, you probably lose the human form of life. So, after speaking about those different kinds of activity and exalting one who nirashir at the chittasma, he's in text 21, those who have no aspiration. Nirashir means no aspiration to enjoy the fruits of the activity. Self-control, controlling the consciousness. He works with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions. This is Tyakta Sarva Parigraha, giving up this, realizing that everything belongs to God. Works to live as simply as possible, not exaggerating the bodily needs. Shariram Kevalam Karma, Kurva Naptanti Kilbasam. Such a person does not incur any sinful reactions. He lives free. So this is a Krishna conscious state of mind. But this verse is very interesting, the one we just read, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir. The idea is that when we're acting fully in Krishna consciousness, everything we do is saturated with that spiritual nature. Suppose you have a service to perform, during the day. So then you have to eat something. Well, then we have prasadam. We don't just eat anything. We cook preparations that are pleasing to Krishna with the right consciousness, vegetarian, and so forth. Offer them, and then the eating becomes a sacrament. It's a way of getting closer to Krishna. Whereas if you just go and buy something in the supermarket and eat it, or just go down to the restaurant, you're just burying yourself more and more in entanglement in the material world. So there's a way of doing it, according to the Shastra, according to the Acharyas, how you can maintain the body nicely, and at the same time progress back to Godhead. I'm reminded of the verse in the 3rd chapter we read some time ago, 3:9. Yagyartat kamano nyatra loko yam karma bandhana. It's a very important instruction. Work has to be done as a sacrifice for Vishnu. Otherwise, work binds one to this material world. It's very pertinent to the subject matter. Well, how do we mold our life in such a way that everything we do is a sacrifice for Vishnu? For that we need instruction. As we'll learn in 10 verses, one of the most famous verses in this chapter, Tad vidhi panipatena pariprashnena sevya ubidekshanti tegenam jnaninas tattvadarshana. That if you want to understand what he just explained about the different kinds of sacrifice, if you want to understand the principles of devotional service, then one has to approach someone who is tattvadarshi, who has seen the truth through purified vision. This comes up also in the Bhagavatam, the 2nd chapter, the 1st canto, where describing the how one should live one's life. It's very parallel to what we've been reading here. It says, Kama sinendriya priti labo jivete yamata. Jivasa tattva jigyasa nato yashchaya karmabi. Here we're talking about karma. How should one live? One shouldn't live simply to satisfy one's material desires. Kama sinendriya priti. Indriya priti means literally sense gratification. Not indriya priti. Don't do that. Then how should one live? Karma sinendriya labho jivete yavata. One should acquire as much as one needs to keep body and soul together, to live simply. Don't exaggerate the needs of the body and the wants of the body and so forth. That will simply keep you tangled up in the material energy. Live as simply as possible. So then what should I do with my energy, with my intellect? Jivasya tattva jigyasa. Now those who know the Vedanta Sutra, echoes the first sutra. One should live in order to inquire into the absolute truth. Tattva, that's a tattva, the absolute truth. Jivasya tattva jigyasa, nato yashcheya karmabi. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. This should be the prime mission that we have. How can we understand? First of all, it's based on understanding. Who are we? What are we actually? Am I this body or am I something else? What is this world? How did it come to be? What's this purpose? Does it have a purpose? And is there a source? Is there a conscious being behind everything, or did it just come out by chance? How did this world come to be? So how did the world come to be? Who am I? And what is my relationship with this world and with that entity where everything came from? This is called sambandha gyan. We should inquire into that, but we have to know where to inquire. And so nobody knew where to inquire. So 50-odd years ago, Srila Prabhupada came as a representative of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya to teach what's revealed in the scriptures and what's experienced by advanced devotees in the line. So he came to give us the truth as it is, and those who accept it and follow the process by which one can realize it find their lives being transformed for the better. Actually, the more we can make our life into a sacrifice, meaning that our motive for working is to connect with Krishna and to be part of the whole mission that is given by our sampradaya and given by Krishna Lord Chaitanya. I mean, part of it to give Krishna consciousness to others and become Krishna conscious ourselves. That really should be the purpose of life. So, back to our verse. When one acts fully absorbed in the Krishna consciousness, then everything that one does and everything one is involved in becomes spiritualized. We saw that with Srila Prabhupada very clearly. It's really nice to read his biography. If the Lilamrita is a big investment, but there's a smaller, abridged version called Srila Prabhupada. He built a house where everyone can live, which is a nice introduction. It tells, essential story. Just like we have the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, just the storyline is nicely produced by some of our devotees. So, everything becomes spiritualized. The eating becomes spiritualized. Your living, your aspirations, your body. Just like this deity. This is Krishna appearing to us in a form that we can see and serve nicely. It's not, a stone statue. Thinking that that is a hellish mentality. There's a verse about that. Arche Vishnav Shiladir, Yasyanara Shiladir Nadakisa. Such a person who thinks that the Archa Vigraha, the worshipable deity in the temple, is a stone statue or a wooden statue, is already a resident of hell. And there's a whole list. You think that devotees of the Lord are determined by where they take birth, that the Guru is an ordinary man, that the water that washes the feet of the deities is just ordinary water, and that the holy name is an ordinary sound. All of that is hellish mentality. Because Krishna, these are all his energies. And when we approach him in the proper way, then the energies that we ordinarily think of as material become spiritualized. Like this water we have every day, it's mixed with the little milk and yogurt sometimes, but it's washed the deity's feet, and so when you sip it, you're getting blessed by that contact, and especially the more you're conscious of the sanctity of the experience, you get that much more benefit. Just like this chanting and this chanting in full absorption and devotion, and then this chanting superficially thinking of something else. Believe me, they're both good. Anyone who's chanting in any kind of way is in a very good spot compared to millions and millions of people. But within that chanting community, we should strive to chant more purely, and we will experience more and more the benefit and the bliss of the holy name. Because it's Krishna. It's inconceivable that the holy name, the sound of the holy name, is non-different from Krishna himself. That's just like a mind-blowing, when you put your mind in it. But you see the great blessing of that we're not going to go off to the Himalayas and perform severe austerities, but we can chant Hare Krishna without beads. You can just sing while we're walking on the street, and suddenly you're in touch with Krishna. That passage in the Bhagavatam, the story of a Jamil, it's a very instructive story. That he was a qualified Brahmin, and he was going out to the forest in order to fetch some wood for his guru for sacrifice like that. And he saw a low-class couple embracing in the bushes in front. And so he lost his equilibrium. He wasn't really a Paka devotee. He was a serious Brahmin. He knew that he shouldn't get involved. But a devotee would call out to Nrsingadev, "Help me, save me," And there's a story with Prabhupada's, because when he was in his household days, he did a lot of traveling for his business. He was head of a pharmaceutical company, so he was always on the trains, So he's sitting on a train one day, and some, prostitute sits down next to him on a seat. Prabhupada closed his eyes, just started chanting loudly, "Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Lord Nrsingadev, Hare Hare Bol." And he opened his eyes, she was gone. She realized, this is not a good customer. He was invited to go to a cinema. He never went to the cinema. He invited to go to the cinema, and he said, no. And his friends insisted. They got him as far as the door, but he wouldn't go in. He would never go in. So that's the signs of a pure devotee. But devotees can call out. I just read a story. I may have read it before because I read this book, but I completely forgot it. Yamuna Devi, who's a great hero in this movement. She's on the song. She sings Govindam every morning. And it was when she was in the San Francisco temple, pioneering the temple in Haight-Ashbury. The famous Haight-Ashbury is still, the heart of the hippie district in the 60s, 67. So it just so happened that the temple was right next to the headquarters of the Hells Angels. They had a facility, so it was kind of incongruous, But they would take prasadam sometimes, so they weren't completely inimical. But at this point, there was maybe they had been drinking or something. So it's just the devotees had gotten to the point where they were putting nose rings in. It was kind of a thing, because it's done. The ladies in India do it, or something. So they all had these nose rings they just put in, All right. So she's walking on the street, and suddenly a bunch of these hoodlums surrounded her. She tried to see they're surrounding her. And so they're mocking her and everything. She's wearing a sari on, and she got the nose ring. So some big galoot, comes in, he puts his finger in the nose ring. You can imagine how dangerous that is, So she just closed her eyes. She had a powerful voice. You can hear her on the records, She was known for that. And so she screamed out, the Shringadev, to the top of her lungs. And that shook him enough to get his finger out of there. And she said she ducked through his feet and ran. And they, she got away like that. And here's even a more amazing story. This is a devotee. Many of you know we had a devotee here, one of the oldest devotees from 22nd Avenue, Madhusudan Prabhu, who passed away maybe a month and 6 weeks ago. And there was a nice memorial. I came here, and I read something, and a lot of devotees, older devotees who knew him. Also, we had Zoom. Some devotees from Zoom were giving their remembrances. Radhanath Swami was there. And so afterward, there was one devotee named Suresha. Now, Suresha is different from our Sureshwar here. But his initiated name is Suresha. His given name was Suresha. Now he's Sureshwar. So, do you want to get a book? Yeah? Okay. So I remembered him from the 70s when I used to work on BTG. And he was on the cover of one of the issues that we had that was published just on July, then we had a theme, July 4th, Independence Day. So the title was Declaring Our Dependence on God. This is the title of Prabhupada's lecture. So I remembered him from that issue, and I remembered he was a book distributor. I remembered a story that I heard about him, of his distributing books in Watts. Now Watts is one of the ghetto areas in LA. And in the late 60s, there had been big riots there after the assassination of Martin Luther King. So they sent him down to Watts to distribute in a dhoti, And he distributed all day, but people were they're very poor, they were giving 25 cents here and there. He had about $25. And then when he was getting ready to go back, he was surrounded by these members of this gang, a very famous gang named the Crips. And you can guess why they'd called the Crips, because they cripple their enemies. So they tell them, yeah, we've been watching you for a couple of hours. We know that you collect this money, so you give us all the money. He said, no, this money belongs to Krishna, God, So they said, oh, we'll beat you up, and they hit him a little bit. So what he did was, just like the Muon, he closed his eyes, and he started calling out to Nrsimhadev very, very loudly. And when he opened his eyes, they were gone. They were all gone. But they already punched him a little bit, so he wanted to get some medicine from what would today be a CVS. He was in a shopping area there. So this part, I'd never heard this part of the story. So he walks into the CVS, and the guy behind the counter, he ducks down and looks at Suresha, furtively, oh, what's he going to do now? He saw something in that parking lot that Suresha didn't see because his eyes were closed, but the other guys saw it and they ran away. Big tough gang members. I don't know what it was. Was it a vision of the Shringadev? Was it some blazing fire or something? But it was something that scared this counterman. So this is... and that wasn't the only time that happened. There was another. This is another story. He was distributing in LA, and they was part of a team, and so they dropped him off at different parts of the city. And he saw the sky; it looked like it was threatening to rain. And so he prayed, to Krishna and to please tell Indra, not to give the rain, like that. So he continued distributing, and it didn't rain. But then when he left his corner, or his area that he was distributing, he saw that the cars were wet. He said, this is kind of peculiar, So he made it back to the temple. And they said, how did everyone do? Was it, And they said, well, we were rained out. They were all distributing in the same city, but where he was, in his block, it didn't rain. Another miracle. Anyway, these things happen. So back to our Yagyartat Kramanoni Yatra. So the idea is that whatever we do that's not a sacrifice, in other words, in the mood of service to Krishna, that's keeping us bound to this world. That's impediments. And Krishna consciousness is meant to teach us how to mold our life so that everything we do is in the mood of sacrifice or service to Krishna. And then we're in this state, Brahmaparnam, Brahmavi, everything merges into spirit. Even your ordinary activities for your life are spiritualized. Your senses become spiritualized, and so that at that point Krishna reveals himself. There's a nice verse about this. Atakshi Krishna namadi nabhavegrayam indriya. With our present material senses, we can't perceive the reality of the name, form, qualities of Krishna. Atakshi Krishna namadi. Namadi means name, etc. What is the etc.? There's 4 things that define a person: name, form, qualities, and activities. Apply to nama, guna, nama, rupa, guna, lila. You see? We can't understand any of those with our present mentality. But if we begin serving Krishna with the tongue, meaning chanting the holy name and taking prasadam, then gradually, if we follow the program, the senses will become purified and Krishna will become pleased and progressively reveal himself to us. This is the promise, you know. And how can you tell if that's happening? You're becoming more attracted to Krishna, more attracted to spiritual matters, and less attracted to Maya, to things that before were dragging your mind away and keeping you bound up. So that's the test. So this is a nice, very nice verse about Brahma Karma Samadhina, that everything merges into Brahman when our activities are completely in sync with Krishna's desires. Okay, now he's going to go describe various kinds of sacrifice. Any question on this verse? Yes, Prabhu.
Krishna Prabhu.
Bible.
So, in one of this line, it says the word Brahma, Brahman, means spiritual.
Which one of it?
It's 24, text 24, middle of the paragraph. After.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
The word Brahman means spiritual. Okay.
Spiritual. So, like when people say in general terms that they are spiritual, so do they mean they are Brahmins? Not knowingly.
I don't think they have any clear idea what it means.
Yeah. So because I talk to a lot of people also in and usually they say we are spiritual, and when I ask them what do you really mean like about spirituality, they're like, oh, we believe in every religion, so we are spiritual. So there is no definition. I guess people don't really know what spirituality or spiritual means.
Yeah, spirit. Really, in its basic meaning, is consciousness. We are combinations of spirit and matter. This body is actually a big machine. Without the presence of the spirit soul, it's just matter and it has to be disposed of. That's called death. And this is very nicely explained in chapter 2. That's what, it says, Abhinashi tad vidhi yena sarvamidam tatam. You should know, Arjun, that what pervades this body is indestructible, can never be destroyed. No one can destroy, can kill the spirit soul. So that distinction between spirit and matter is the first lesson in Krishna consciousness. And our problem is that we're identifying completely with matter. We're not understanding our real nature. Because the spirit is by nature joyful, eternal, full of knowledge, full of peace. But when the spirit identifies, because we're minute, we get identified with whatever body we're in, then we take the body as the self and the needs of the body as our needs and the pleasures of the body as our pleasures, and we're bound up in this material world. And it's a tragic situation in a sense, because it doesn't have to be that way. We created it by ignoring Krishna, detaching ourselves artificially from Krishna, forgetting him, because we wanted to dominate. We wanted to be the master and the enjoyer. That's not our natural condition. In order to play like that, we have to be given a material body that we can, identify with and try to dominate. But ultimately we fail. We get old and die. It doesn't matter who we are, even Brahma down to the Prabhupada say, from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, then we're all mortal. So the idea is to wake up to the reality, and to work toward rehabilitating ourselves, so that we really live spiritually. People don't know what it means. What they're saying there is that I've had it with organized religion, and it's a fact that in America, fewer and fewer people are attending church. When I was growing up, Sunday mornings, it wasn't that everyone was sleeping in; everyone was at church. I wasn't at church because I belonged to the Jewish religion, but we weren't very strict. It was basically atheistic. But that's not so anymore. It's true that there's hardly anyone on the street, but it's not because they're at church. They're sleeping off the previous night's party. So it's a fact. You can look it up. You Google it. You'll see church belief in God is going down in America. So the problem is people don't know. They have some idea. They cobble together. But the idea is, I'm not any part of any organized religion, but I'm very spiritual. And what do they mean? I don't know. It can mean almost anything. But really, to be spiritual means to inquire. What is spirit? What is matter? Who am I? Understand I'm purely spiritual. How did I get into this situation of being embodied and being limited by the body? Because you want to understand the glories of the spirit. The Supreme Spirit is unlimitedly blissful and eternal, and we're part and parcel of that. So, since it says another sutra in the Brahma Sutras, Anandamayo Bhyasat, means that the ultimate truth is full of bliss always. And how do we know? By his activities, we can see. That's what that sutra means. We're part and parcel of Krishna, therefore that's our heritage. But who can say they're that way now? We're not Satchidananda. We're certainly not eternal in these bodies. There's so much we don't know. We're full of ignorance, and we're not always blissful. So, how to get back to that original state? That's real religion. What is Dharma? Dharma is religion. That's answered in the 2nd chapter, 1st canto. Very important section. Dharma, Svanachitak Pungsam Vishuksen. I'm sorry, Sabai Pungsang Paro Dharma Yato Bhaktir Hokshije. One line. Real Dharma is that which produces pure devotion to God, which has to be unmotivated and uninterrupted to fully satisfy the self. So where is that? How can I find it? That's the process of devotional service. So if they say they're spiritual, they say, well, here's how one can be really spiritual all the time. You can give them a book. All right, let's do one more, at least. Gata sangasya muktasya. I'm sorry, that's not where we are. 25. Daivamevapare yagyam yogina paryupasate brahmagnavapare yagyam yagyenaiva Okay, a lot of yagyas there. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices to them. And some offer sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman. Purport. As described above, a person engaged in discharging duties in Krishna consciousness is also called a perfect yogi or a first-class mystic. But there are others also who perform similar sacrifices in the worship of demigods, and still others who sacrifice, to the Supreme Brahman or the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord. So there are different kinds of sacrifices in terms of different categories. Such different categories of sacrifice by different types of performers only superficially demark varieties of sacrifice. Factually, sacrifice means to satisfy the Supreme Lord Vishnu, who is also known as Yagya. Prabhupada brings this up. Yagya is the word for sacrifice. It's also a name for Vishnu, so you can see how closely they relate. All of the different varieties of sacrifice can be placed within two primary divisions. Namely, sacrifice of worldly possessions and sacrifice in pursuit of transcendental knowledge. Those who are in Krishna consciousness sacrifice all material possessions for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, while others who want some temporary material happiness sacrifice their material possessions to satisfy demigods such as Indra, the sun god, etc. And others who are impersonalists sacrifice their identity by merging into the existence of impersonal Brahman. The demigods are powerful living entities appointed by the Supreme Lord for the maintenance and supervision of all material functions like the heating, watering, and lighting of the universe. Those who are interested in material benefits worship the demigods by various sacrifices according to the Vedic rituals. They are called Bhav Ishvara Vadi, or believers in many gods. But others who worship the impersonal feature of the Absolute Truth and regard the forms of the demigods as temporary, sacrifice their individual selves in the supreme fire, and thus end their individual existences by merging into the existence of the Supreme. Such impersonalists sacrifice their time in philosophical speculation to understand the transcendental nature of the Supreme. In other words, the fruitive workers sacrifice their material possessions for material enjoyment, whereas the impersonalist sacrifices his material designations with a view to merging into the existence of the Supreme. For the impersonalist, the fire altar of sacrifice is the Supreme Brahman, and the offering is the self being consumed by the fire of Brahman. The Krishna conscious person like Arjuna, however, sacrifices everything for the satisfaction of Krishna, and thus all his material possessions as well as his own self, everything is sacrificed for Krishna. Thus he is the first-class yogi, but he does not lose his individual existence. So this principle of sacrifice is going on even in this material world. People who have no idea. People are sacrificing like crazy. They're getting up early, they're getting on the thruway, they're sacrificing their time, they're, and when it comes time, for their child to go to college, they're sacrificing for that. There's sacrifices going on. But the question is, what is the motive? And what is the efficacy of that sacrifice? Like we find so many young people, they go to school, college, because how are you going to get ahead unless you go to college? But when you go to college, you find, oh my God, it's so expensive. How can I get it? No problem, we'll give you a loan. A federal loan, right? Says, oh, okay, let me get a federal loan, and then I'll get a good job, be able to pay it off. But they come out of college and there's no jobs. Now what? You got this debt, and you can't declare bankruptcy on the debt. There's trillions of that out there oppressing these people who went through college. Luckily, I dropped out of college. I had a full scholarship, but I dropped out. I had no debt. So the sacrifice is there, but what do you get for it? In other words, you cheated. You've sacrificed your time, you sacrificed your money, and then you get cheated. It's not. You're left with not what you expected. So Krishna consciousness is such that you can sacrifice a little bit and get tremendous benefit. Sankirtan Jagya, that's the Jagya of the age. These other Jagyas are not feasible in this age, really. So what do you have to sacrifice? A little time, little energy, right? Basically nothing. You don't even have to get to the temple. You can do it at home. You can do it anywhere. And the benefits are just unheard of. The first time you chant the name Krishna, you just eliminated eons full of karma. This is Krishna's blessing. It's not that, we think Krishna is that reasonable? I killed people, I ate animals. That's just the way it is. Just like if you do sins unknowingly and you suffer. That's not fair, I didn't know. Sorry, you should have known. You should know the laws of the state you're in. You should know the laws of the universe you're in. Right? Similarly, there's this amazing blessing Krishna gives for those who chant His holy name. But that's not the ultimate benefit of chanting. People may chant superficially or just walk by a chanting party and say, oh, that's the Hare Krishna, something like that. They just chanted the name. But there's the momentum of their karma is such that next thing you know, they turn in and they just go have a nice steak dinner washed down with beer. More sin. In other words, the blades of the fan are still moving. So unless you really practice seriously, then you're going to start a whole new series of sins. But still, the chanting is so blessed and so wonderful. So that kind of sacrifice, that is, we should know that the knowledge is there. What is the meaning of the Sankirtan Yajna? What is the efficacy? What is the result? And that will inspire us to, okay, I should take part in it. I should take it seriously, make it a part of my life. And the more you know about it, the more you feel the benefits of the chanting, the more your faith will grow, and you want to pursue more and more of the process. Because the ultimate benefit is no more birth, no more death, going back home, back to Godhead. We should learn about what's back there in Godhead. We read in the Brahma Samhita. There's so many descriptions, but this is a famous one. At the end of the Brahma Samhita, there's this beautiful couple of verses about the spiritual world, sung by Brahma, who should know. Shriya kanta kanta padama padusha kalpatadabo dhuma bhumi shindamana ganamahi toyamamatam kata ganam natyam gamanam apibangshi priyasaki chidanandam jyoti padamapitadasvajamapicha sayatra chirabdi srabdidabibinjastusumahan nimeshadakyo bhavajadinihiyatra apisamayak Bhaje Shvetadvipam Tamayamahago Lokamitiyam Vidantaste Sandhachitipatachara Katipaye. So what he says there is that in Goloka Vrindavan, he's describing the ultimate abode, there's all these goddesses of fortune, and they're all have Krishna as their beloved. Shriya Kanta, Kanta means beloved. Kanta Padama Purusha, the supreme person is Krishna, he's there, and surrounded by all these goddesses of fortune, gopis. Padama Purusha, Kalpatadavo Druma. There's trees there, but they're not ordinary trees. These are Kalpa Vriksha trees. You can get any fruit you want in the season, organically grown, tree ripened, and offer it to Krishna that you want. Kalpatadavo. Bhumi's Chintamani. There's not just ordinary land there. It's all made of Chintamani gems. Toyama. There's not ordinary water, but all the water is nectar. There's no just talking there. Everyone is singing. You just sing to each other. Beautiful verses. Kata ganam, and walking is dancing. Natyam gamanam, and one can always hear that flute in the background. Krishna's dear friend, the flute. And everything is glowing there with chidananda, with spiritual bliss, and which you can directly taste. Chidanandam jyoti padamabitat asvadamapicha. There are all of these Surabhi cows, the milk is so abundant and flowing. Not a second passes by there. There's only the eternal present. There's no future, there's no past. Everything is the eternal. Only a very few souls on this world know that Goloka, described. So these kinds of descriptions, and there's so much more, should inspire us, to learn more and to try to go there after this lifetime. Or at least to make progress so that we're on our way back to Godhead. That was what Prabhupada came for, and he was always encouraging us. Yes, you can go back in this life. Don't postpone it. Don't take any risk. It's hard. It's difficult because we're so conditioned. But the more we hear about it, the more we practice, the more we can feel that we're at least make some progress in this lifetime. Any questions on this verse? Yogina paripasate. Okay, let's see, what's this one? Text 26. Yeah, we can read this one. Text 26. Sotradin indriyanyanye Sangyamagni shujuvati Shabdadin vishayananya Indriyagni shujuvati. Some, the unadulterated brahmacharis, sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of mental control. And others, the regulated householders, sacrifice the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses. Purport. The members of the four divisions of human life, namely the brahmachari, the grihastha, the vanaprastha, and the sannyasi, are all meant to become perfect yogis or transcendentalists. Since human life is not meant for our enjoying sense gratification like the animals, the four orders of human life are so arranged that one may become perfect in spiritual life. The brahmacharis, or the students under the care of a bona fide spiritual master, control the mind by abstaining from sense gratification. A brahmachari hears only words concerning Krishna consciousness. Hearing is the basic principle for understanding, and therefore the pure brahmachari engages fully in Hare Namanukirtanam, chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord. He restrains himself from the vibrations of material sounds, and his hearing is engaged in the transcendental sound vibration of Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Similarly, the householders who have some license for sense gratification perform such acts with great restraint. Sex life, intoxication, and meat eating are general tendencies of human society, but a regulated householder does not indulge in unrestricted sex life and other sense gratification. Marriage, on the principles of religious life, is therefore current in all civilized human society, because that is the way for restricted sex life. This restricted, unattached sex life is also a kind of yajna, because the restricted householder sacrifices his general tendency towards sense gratification for a higher transcendental life. So this is this principle of sacrifice. We recognize, you have to recognize that we're in kind of a diseased condition in the material world. We're conditioned and habituated to act in a certain way, life after life. And unfortunately, that usual way of acting keeps us bound in this world, and we experience all kinds of suffering, which is not natural or necessary for the soul. The soul is not meant to be in this condition. So once we understand that there's a mission, that there's a method, there's a mission of human life to get out of this bondage of matter and return to the spiritual world, and we've been given the method to do it. And it all involves training the mind and the senses, because that's the mind and the senses under the modes of nature is what keeps us bound here. So how to use the mind and the senses in such a way that they become purified, and that's the process of sadhana bhakti, the process Prabhupada gave us. You know, the do's and the don'ts. And read the Nectar of Devotion, which is a how-to book, really. Not just how-to, but what the results of it are. The nice descriptions of the different rasas there, Sakya Ras, Parental Ras. There's a whole special book, part 2 of the Nectar Devotion, about the conjugal ras. It's there, mentioned there in the Nectar Devotion, but details are given in this Ujjvala Nilamani book, which Prabhupada didn't translate, but which is available also. So the opportunity is there. It's just a question of us being determined to take advantage of it. That's what Prabhupada started. That's what this movement is all about. And you're faithfully, hearing Bhagavad Gita, which is a good first step. Read the books carefully, follow the instructions, and then I'll give you one poem, one of the results. It says, meditating on Krishna, entering the forest with his friends. This is the beginning of chapter 21, the Venu Gita. Barhabidam natavadavapu karnayo karnikaram bimrunvasa kanakakapisham vaijayanting chamalam randran veno hadadasudaya puriyan gopa vrinda vrindaranyam sopadanamanam pravishan gita kirti, with lovely peacock plume upon his head and fragrant flower placed upon each ear, he enters Braja's wood with graceful tread, a handsome dancing actor without peer. His golden yellow raiment brightly glows, his splendid garland reaches to his knees, and from his luscious lips the nectar flows, and filled his flute with charming melodies. As Krishna thus begins his blissful day with coward friends who sing his glory sweet, he beautifies Vrindavan's forest way with fine impressions of his lotus feet. There you go. It's not even in Sanskrit. Anyone who wants the poetry, write me, Dravida108@gmail. I'll send you my poetry file. There's many more beside that. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Bol.